If you've watched a few of my videos, you will probably have seen that freight handling is something which I really enjoy on the Peckforton Light Railway. This means I have to have a wide selection of goods rolling stock to manage the range of freight which can be handled on this rural 1930s railway. I have been asked many times where I sourced my goods rolling stock, and the answer is fairly simple. Wagons have been scratch-built using plasticard on commercial chassis, modified, or in my case bashed, from off-the-shelf models, or constructed from kits. Let's take a closer look at this rather long goods train to discover the origins of the wagons it contains. The loco itself is a 3D printed scratch build of a Skull and Skibbereen Naismith & Wilson 044, and the first wagon is one of my early scratch builds, a resin cast body on a Heartland Loco Works chassis. Unfortunately, Heartland Loco Works is no longer in business. Their cheap £10 mini-series wagons provided the chassis for many of my scratch build bodies. The mould for the castings was made using plasticard templates for one side and one end. The castings were then glued to the chassis and given a coat or two of paint. Most of the wagons were given removable coal loads, as coal traffic was very heavy in the 1930s. Other wagons were given mixed loads, all of which can be removed, so the wagons can run full in one direction and then empty on the return journey. Wagon number 2 in the train is another open wagon, with a completely different origin. It started life as a cheap, Hong Kong-produced model of a US gondola car. As you can see, it was vastly overscale for my UK narrow gauge railway. So, it was cut down and shortened with a razor saw, and then given a coat or two of paint. Not bad for a £5 investment on eBay. The third wagon in the train is a van. Like the previous wagon, it was originally an off-the-shelf G-scale model of a boxcar. This one was a brand new Keda wagon costing all of £16. It too was butchered with a razor saw, and then painted in PLR livery, actually a Halford's rattle can of grey primer. The next wagon is based loosely on one of the cattle wagons which ran on the Welshpool and Llanfair Railway. Its bodywork was scratch-built, and it was mounted on an LGB flat wagon, of which you'll see more later. The body was constructed entirely from strips of plasticard, whilst we were on holiday in France. I never did learn the French for solvent adhesive, and had to use plastic pipe weld. Once back in the UK, the flat pack of pieces were assembled and the resultant pair of wagons sprayed with grey primer and the metalwork picked out in black acrylic paint. The fifth vehicle is another cattle wagon, built from a kit supplied by IP Engineering. This was the first 16mm scale wooden kit I'd built, so was somewhat of a learning experience. However, the instructions were very clear and the pieces went together neatly and logically. I don't think it's based on any particular prototype, but it looks like a narrow gauge wagon. As with all my wagons, it received a couple of coats of grey primer and had detailing picked out with black acrylics. Next comes one of several timber wagons on the railway, needed to transport lumber to and prepared timber from the sawmill at Peckforton Station. This model is simply a bog-standard LGB toy train stake wagon. Repainted in PLR colours and given a removable load of logs held in place with chains, which actually just dangle loosely in the slots for the stakes. These wagons form the basis for quite a few other modifications on the railway, the cattle wagons we saw earlier and some flat wagons which turn up later. And now comes yet another box van. This started life as another LGB toy train wagon, a van with an end balcony. It was one of my first freelance conversions. The balcony end was boxed in, and the window in the side at the other end blocked up, with plasticard. My handiwork was disguised with yet more Halford's primer, and the wagons, I made 2 of them, given a dose of light weathering. The next wagon is yet another van, but this one is a 3D printed scratch build. This wagon is a model of one of the early Southwold Railway short wheelbase vans. It was drawn as a kit of parts using Tinkercad, a free online CAD package. The parts were then printed out with a filament printer and assembled. It was then painted in PLR livery and weathered. I later converted the drawings to the long wheelbase version of the van, in much the same way as they did in the workshops at Southwold. I am in the process of drawing and printing all the types of wagons which ran on the Southwold Railway and their variants, and have placed the files on the gardenrails.org forum for anyone to download. And I have recently finished off the files for the Clemenson 6-wheeled open wagons, after a fair bit of trial and error experimentation with getting the chassis to work reliably. And next comes yet another New Keda box van conversion, using exactly the same technique as previously. In addition to general merchandise, the railway needs plenty of closed vans to transport soft fruit from the farms near Buckley. And then, hidden behind the foliage, we have a flat wagon. As mentioned previously, this makes use of an LGB toy train stake wagon chassis, repainted, and in this case given a tractor load, which as you can see is removable. The tractor is a metal ornament from a knick-knack shop. I have another tractor load which was once a resin cast money box, yet another eBay find. The railway has 3 further shorter wheelbase flat wagons, which are basically Heartland Loco Works chassis, with a plank deck, to which has been added a couple of end blocks with wire loops. One of these flat wagons has a load of agricultural implements from Britain's Farmyard series. As Heartland Loco Works wagons are now no longer available, I've created my own 3D printable version to the same dimensions. This is available as a Thingiverse download. The next 2 wagons are resin cast opens, but just behind them is my very first scratch-built wagon for the Peckforton Light Railway, an open wagon with curved ends, similar to those that ran on the Southwold Railway. Mounted on the ubiquitous Heartland Loco Works wagon chassis, the body was made from plasticard with strips forming the strapping. It was painted in standard Peckforton Light Railway livery and given a load made from real crushed coal. 4 open wagons were made in this way before I decided to start mass production using my resin castings. Next comes another resin cast open wagon with a mixed load, and following that is yet another style of closed van. This large box van was constructed from a Garden Railway Specialist combi kit, which comprised a set of pre-cut plasticard parts, 2 butchered LGB toy train chassis, and an LGB toy train open wagon body. The parts produced a long wheelbase van and a short wheelbased open wagon. I didn't like the look of the open wagon and so sold it on, but I now have 2 of these vans, even though I'm not entirely sure what prototype they're based on. Next comes an open-topped livestock wagon constructed from an IP Engineering laser-cut wooden kit. It was painted in PLR livery and given a load of 3D printed sheep. Trailing behind the sheep wagon is a different style of timber stake wagon. This is an off-the-shelf LGB Feldbahn wagon, which I bought as part of a job lot on eBay. Repainted in PLR livery and weathered, it has been given a load of long pit props for use in the copper mine. The 3 other wagons also have pit prop loads of various lengths. The loads are removable. Attached to the pit prop wagon is a tankum wagon. Yet another modified LGB toy train wagon. It has been given wire restraint rods, which are connected to timber end pieces. Repainted in PLR livery and given some light weathering, it is mostly used to transport fuel to the copper mine. The second open wagon, which was bashed from a cheap US-style gondola car, follows, and then, last of all, comes a brake van. This is another IP Engineering kit-built model, which I bought second-hand and painted in PLR livery. It is one of 3 goods brake vans, one of which is another Garden Railway Specialist combi kit, based on the LGB toy train balcony van, yet another eBay find. And the third brake van was scratch-built from lollipop sticks while we were on holiday in Pembrokeshire. You may have gathered, I'm not a great fan of sitting on beaches and reading. In addition to the general goods stock, I also have 2 rakes of tippler skip wagons, which are used to transport ore and spoil from the copper mine. These started life as off-the-shelf LGB skips, repainted and weathered with rusting compounds. One rake runs down the line as empties, and the other up the line, loaded. And last, but by no means least, is a rake of hopper wagons, based loosely on those that ran on the Snail Beach and District Railway. These were scratch-built on, well, you guessed it, Heartland Loco Works wagon chassis, chopped about a bit with a razor saw. The bodies were made from plasticard, with dozens of nail art gem rivets painstakingly glued on. Painted in Peckforton Light Railway grey, they were weathered and given removable loads of sand, so they could run to and from the sand quarry siding near Bickerton. I hope you have found this overview of my goods rolling stock of interest. Finding ways of creating my own wagons has kept me occupied and engaged for the last 15 years. But then, that's what I find so captivating about this hobby, solving problems and facing new challenges.